Hey guys, Horror Man back for another review. So today we're going to take a look at the NECA Toys MegaDeth Vic Rattleshirt figure. Now this is part of the retro style line that NECA has going on, and it's basically an ongoing line of rock music mascots, and sometimes they actually do the actual band. But so far in the retro line we've mainly just seen these mascots from like Iron Maiden, and now MegaDeth. So pretty cool figure if you're a fan of the band or just like heavy metal music. I've been a fan of this band for a long time. I even used to draw Vic like on my subject notebooks, so I'm pretty excited for this figure. So just taking a closer look at it, you can see it is in that retro box packaging we're kind of used to at this point. It doesn't have those graphics like we've seen from Jason Edmiston where it's in the clamshell. This is in more of the box that we've seen with like Hateful Eight and Christmas Vacation and stuff like that. You do have the MegaDeth logo at the top. They've used pretty much the same logo forever, but this is definitely the logo I'm accustomed to. You can see the figures clearly displayed in the window. And then at the bottom it just says, "Peace sells, but who's buying?" And that's basically the song and the album that this is from. And then you can see Vic kind of hunched on top of a for sale sign. You do have a warning at the bottom, and it says ages 14 and up. Over to the back of the packaging, you do get a really cool photo of the figure itself. I know it doesn't really look like the figure. It really looks like that artwork, but it is the figure, and you can see he's got that for sale sign. And then below the figure, you can see just a little read-up about Vic and MegaDeth. And if you want to pause it, you can read that little bio. On the bottom of the box, you get the credit for the figure, the MegaDeth logo, UPC code, and the NECA logo. On the top, it just has that MegaDeth logo again, and it says, "Peace sells, but who's buying?" And on the sides of the packaging, again, you just get that big MegaDeth logo, and it says, "Peace sells, but who's buying?" And you also get this little hanger peg at the top of the box. This is something that NECA has just started doing with their Ultimates, and it looks like they are doing it with their retro boxed figures as well. This is a little bit easier to hang on your wall, and if you're in the store, it's a little bit easier to actually hang on the pegs. I know I've seen people like just stand them up on a shelf, and most of the time they just get knocked over, and it's not a very good display. So it's pretty cool they added this little piece. Alright, so I'm pretty excited for this figure. Let's go ahead and get it out of the box and get a closer look. Now before we get to the actual figure, you do get this really cool backdrop, which is always welcome with these NECA figures. It's basically a part of the cover, just the background from the cover. You can kind of see the planes coming down and just a bunch of like destruction in the background, so pretty cool. Alright, so here is the figure outside of the packaging, and this thing looks awesome, man. I'm excited for this. Love the color already. So let's go ahead and get a nice close-up of the head sculpt. We'll talk about the one accessory that it comes with, and just take a closer look at the clothing and articulation. Alright, so taking a closer look at that head sculpt, man, NECA has hit it out of the park with this head sculpt. Holy cow. If you look at like the top of the skull, the way they've done the paint, how it kind of has like a gradient look, but it's very bright in the center, I just love that. I think that is nailed. That is the way he looks. Just really like that they captured that. He's got, of course, the chains hanging off the pieces on the side of his head. It always kind of looked like headphones to me. But it's pretty cool. You can see the chains kind of hanging down. The goggles have those kind of studs going into the skull. Now he kind of has like these red looking like dots on part of the goggles. They kind of look like eyes. They're not meant to look like that. It's just the way the paint is done. It kind of gives it that look. That's the only thing I'm not 100% sold on. I don't really like the placement of it as much because it kind of gives it this wall-eyed look somehow. But it's not horrible. It's just my only kind of gripe. I kind of wish that was a little bit better blended, if that makes sense. And if you look at the teeth, man, the teeth are really well done. And they have, of course, those little metal pieces kind of going into the jaw, kind of like holding the jaw together. Just absolutely looks great. Alright, just taking a look at the profile of Vic, you can see the details again are really, really well done. Great coloring all around on that skull. You can see the sides are much different, a little bit of reds and purples, just really, really well done. You can see like the different cracking and wrinkling in the skull above where like the, I guess like the, this chain part, like the ear part is kind of hanging down. Just right around that, just all the cracks and wrinkling and sculpting work is just really well done. The goggles, which what I really like about it from the side, it almost has a reflective look to it. And I kind of wonder if they would have went with like a chrome, paint on the goggles, if that would have been a better choice. I think that would have been really cool. But from the side, they really look almost reflective, which I really like. And then just down to that mouth, you could see the cheekbone is really well done. Jaws, obviously, the way they've made it separate just looks really awesome. You can see the teeth kind of coming through. I love how you have the metal pieces kind of protruding forward, which is really cool. You can see the chain hangs down very nicely. So just all in all, I just think the head sculpt is excellent. And just taking a look at the back of the skull, again, you got that great line work and excellent paint. And I just like how the chains flow very nicely. They're not like bunched up or anything like that. So again, just great detail. And if you look at the right side of Vic's face, again, you do get those great details like you did on the left side, but the paint scheme is much darker, and you can almost not even see the teeth on the right side of his face. But of course, you can still see those different metal pieces on his jaw, and the work, again, is very cleanly done and really represents the way he looks on that cover. Now, I haven't seen a lot of people review this figure, but I have seen people kind of say that the chains were plastic, which is actually not true. The chains are metal. You can see this little magnet here magnetizes to the chains, so they are definitely metal chains, not plastic. Now, just taking a look at the outfit here, again, this is going to be more of the in line with the retro figures that NECA makes. So you do have the really well used fabric here. And I'm thinking that this tie that they used is probably from Ash or from Leatherface when he had that, I think it's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I remember both of those guys had a tie, so that's probably where that's from. But I love how, like, if you lift the tie, you still have a little bit of detail here, but when you put it down, you can see how it matches really well to the shirt, how it blends in, just perfect. I mean, it lines up easily with no real effort, so I really like that. You do get basically just, the suit, so, you do get most of the detail in here. You do get the white on the inside, but most people aren't going to see that. You get a lot of red through the jacket, and then onto the side you can see how well it's blended with the darker colors and the red, and mainly on the back you get the red. And I really like the way they've done the skeleton hands. You see the details are just really, really good. Now, you don't really get articulation in those fingers or anything, but you do get plenty of articulation in the wrists. And here's just the underside of the hand, like the palm, and again, you can see just really, really good detail in those fingers. And just looking at the lower half of the body, he's got some great details in those pants. Again, just those same kind of darker and like red tones kind of going all through the pants to give it that look of the album. And even the boots themselves have that red tones going through them, just like the rest of the body. So it's nice to see the plastic and cloth have found a way to really blend together, which I really like. The only thing I don't like about the cowboy boots that he's wearing is I hate when they, give a character cowboy boots, but they don't actually like finish the boot, and I'm sure that allows for that articulation, but it's kind of annoying. Alright, so you do get a decent amount of range of articulation with Vic. It's pretty much the same as we've seen with all the retro figures, so I don't know, if you've seen these figures or you own them before, pretty much know what to expect. So with the head, you can turn plenty, left to right, up and down, whatever you need. You can turn it all the way around if you really wanted to. The chains, since they're real chains, you can move them, pose them. They're not going to stay real easy in a position, but you can see they can kind of wrap up on themselves a little bit. So you can get some kind of posing out of those. You can go pretty far out with the arms, get them in that T pose. Single joint on the elbow. You can get some kind of articulation with the wrist, whether you want to go up and down or just twist it left and right. He can go decently far out. He's not going to do any kind of high kicks, but he can move his leg out a little bit. You got the single hinged knee joint, and you have plenty of articulation in that boot, again, because they didn't really sculpt the full cowboy boot, so you do get articulation there. You can do a decent split, but he's got tight jeans on like any rock star would, so you're not going to get, you don't want to like tear his pants. But yeah, a decent amount of articulation. It's a retro figure. You're not going to get, you got a little bit of twist in the waist. So yeah, I mean, it's good enough. Again, you're not going to get crazy articulation, but good enough to do some cool pictures with. Alright, so the only real accessory you get with this figure is the for sale sign, and it's the appropriate accessory. Just like the figure, it's basically painted in that same kind of, reds, purples, blues, just kind of like the album cover, so it all should blend together really nicely, and I just love this paint scheme, man. It's so cool. Now when you get this for sale sign, it actually is in 2 pieces. And there is a little bit of assembly required when you first get this sign. It's really not much. This sign can actually be removed from the base, and then there's just a little notch in here that tells you where to put this in. But it's kind of cool, so if you wanted him to maybe hold this sign instead of kind of hunching on it, you do have that option. And here he is with the for sale sign, and he looks pretty cool, man. This is about the closest I can get him to that album cover. I can't really get him to hold that arm kind of semi-crossing with the other arm. But yeah, you could probably get some really cool poses with Vic. But again, you could really see how well that sign blends in with the character himself. So let's go ahead and compare him with some of the other NECA Retro figures, and we'll actually compare him with some other lines and some 7-inch scale. So let's go ahead and get to the comparison. Alright, so for the first comparison, here he is next to the NECA Retro collection. You have the Roy as Jason on the left from Friday the 13th Part 5, and on the right you have the Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. And you can see these guys are all about the same size, but Vic, maybe because of his big head, he looks just a hair taller. But all in all, they look really good next to each other. And for the next comparison, again, this is a NECA Retro collection. You have the young Jason Voorhees with his little Camp Crystal Lake shirt next to Vic, and then on the other side of Vic you have Pam Voorhees, of course Jason's mom, and this is from an old San Diego set. I believe it was from 2015, which is a very rare set, but you can see they're very well in scale together. Vic is a little bit taller than Pam, and young Jason, of course, is much, much smaller. And for the last NECA Retro comparison, here he is next to the Child's Play Chucky. Now this is based on just the Good Guy doll, before Chucky goes nuts. Now that's a Scream Factory exclusive, so it's a little rare. And then of course next to the Part 2 Freddy Krueger. And then you can see the scale's pretty good. Now Chucky really isn't in scale with the other retro figures, as he's a lot bigger. And for the 7-inch scale comparisons, here he is next to Freddy and Jason, and you can see that Vic is definitely bigger than both of them. And just for one more 7-inch scale comparison, here he is next to the Lost Boys Michael, which probably listened to Megadeth back in the 80s. And then the Chucky, which is the Ultimate Chucky. And if you look at this Chucky compared to the last one, this one actually scales really well. So I think this Chucky fits in almost perfect with these retro figures, whereas the other Chucky that I showed before this kind of goes more with 12-inch scale figures. But all in all, I mean, they look really cool together. They'll probably look great on the shelf. And for the final comparison, here he is next to some different music figures in my collection. From the far left, that is a custom Jared Leto, like 30 Seconds to Mars Jared Leto. And then next to Vic on his left side is Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. That's like the Teen Spirit figure, and that's made by NECA Toys. And then right next to him is James Hetfield, which is from Metallica, and he is made by McFarlane. So even though the music figures are much smaller than Vic, he's a mascot, so he can really be any size. So I think he'll still look really cool in your music selection of figures. Alright, so that's my review of the NECA MegaDeth Retro Vic Rattle Shirt figure. And I'm really happy with this one. I think if you're a fan of Megadeth or just heavy metal music, this is definitely going to be your thing. You know, the 80s, Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, Iron Maiden, I mean, you name it. Those metal bands were pretty much everything for anybody from middle school and up. And I was definitely one of those kids with this Symphony of Destruction shirt and, you know, things like that. So it was a really cool time, and it's just a great band I've always been a huge fan of. And I think I kind of touched on this, but when I was a kid, I used to draw Vic, like on my notebooks and everything. I used to have this like obsession with drawing skeletons and like horror stuff, and man, Vic was like the answer to all that. So I'm really excited with this. I'm happy with how it came out. I have very minor gripes. You know, I really think that if they do another Vic figure, I would love to see like a chromed out visor or goggles, whatever you want to call those. But the presentation overall is really good. I think they've done a great job. They've nailed the look of Vic. There really isn't much more they could have done to make this look any better. The articulation is good enough. You can't quite get the album pose that I was hoping for, but in general, I think they've nailed it. And then one more thing I want to mention is I'm sure he won't watch this review, but if he does, I just want to wish Dave Mustaine healthy recovery. If you haven't heard, he does have throat cancer, which is like crushing for the fans and people that have known and loved him, I'm sure. So I wish him the best of luck and a healthy recovery. I would love to get this signed by him, so I'm hoping. I have seen him live before, but I'm really hoping that maybe I can meet him and have one of these signed. I just think he's so cool. I've always been a fan. He's very talented, and I just wish him the best of luck with his recovery. And again, thanks for watching my review. Please leave a comment, question, like the video, share the video, subscribe, please subscribe. And you know, we got San Diego Comic-Con coming up, so I'm sure I'll have some cool NECA reviews coming. So stay posted on that. And until next time, guys, see ya.